chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to Jasmine Crockett as the words slipped out, and in that instant the tension ignited. It wasn't just a slip of the tongue, it was a spark, the kind that sets dry timber ablaze. Chief Justice John. Robert straightened in his chair, the faintest flicker of disbelief passing over his normally composed face. His hand hovered above the gavel, ready to strike, ready to reclaim control. But the silence was louder than any order he could give. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson leaned forward, her expression carved from steel and calm. Her eyes locked on Crockett with the unspoken authority of a woman who had fought her way through storms far fiercer than this. In the gallery, a murmur swelled like a rising tide. Reporters glanced at each other, pens trembling above notepads. Camera lens zoomed tighter, catching every flicker of expression, every twitch of tension across the faces on the bench. Even those who had attended 100 hearings before could feel that this was not routine. This was history trying to decide which way it would tilt. The gavel came down. Once, sharp and echoing, a thunderclap meant to restore order. But order was already broken. The weight of Crockett's words lingered in the air, thick and heavy, as if the chamber itself demanded an answer. Some leaned forward in fascination, others recoiled in unease. For every smirk that Crockett carried, on her face, there was a matching grimace among those who knew she had gone too far. Jackson did not move quickly, and that was the power. Composure radiated louder than any insult. Robert's silence, taut with restraint, made clear that the court itself was at stake, not in law, but in dignity. And across the country, millions of viewers leaned closer to their screens. Social feeds buzzed with clip soundbites before the exchange had even ended. In living rooms, in cafes, in college dorms, people whispered the same thing. Did she really just say that? What had begun as a fiery remark was now something else entirely, a collision waiting to happen. A test of composure against chaos. No one expected what happened next. A confrontation that would leave not only the chamber, but the nation itself utterly speechless. Why did this moment matter? Why did a few sentences dropped into the air like sparks set the nation on edge? Because this was not just about a sharp remark or a heated exchange. It was about the soul of an institution colliding with the spectacle of politics. The Supreme Court, the symbol of enduring authority, was facing down the kind of fiery theatrics that play well in sound bites, but rarely survive the weight of history. At the center of it all sat Chief Justice John Roberts, a man who has built his career on the quiet preservation of judicial legitimacy. His demeanor was not about theatrics, but about order, precedent, and restraint. His very presence embodied continuity, the promise that the court would remain above the chaos of partisan squabbles. Across from him, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson brought a different kind of authority born of lived experience, sharpened by years of relentless preparation, and magnified by the historic weight of being the first black woman on the highest court. Together, they represented two poles of dignity, tradition and progress, united in their insistence that truth must carry more weight than volume. And then there was Jasmine Crockett. Her eyes had not been fueled by quiet perseverance or steady leadership, but by fire. She was known for her confrontational style, for the way she could command a room with blunt defiance. In the House, that energy made her a star among supporters who cheered her unfiltered voice. Then, in this chamber, that same energy risked clashing with something much larger, the enduring expectation that justice must be bigger than ego. This clash mattered because it wasn't simply Crockett versus Roberts or Crockett versus Jackson. It was arrogance versus composure. It was the performance of defiance against the substance of law. It was a moment where America was forced to look at itself in the mirror and ask, do we reward the loudest voice, or do we honor the one that stands firm without raising its volume? Millions watching from home could feel it. Some saw in Crockett a reflection of frustration, a refusal to bow to authority. Others saw recklessness, a willingness to burn down trust for the sake of a viral moment. On the other side, Roberts and Jackson stood like anchors, refusing to be swept into the current of political spectacle. Their very silence spoke of restraint. Their measured responses underscored the dignity that arrogance could never manufacture. This wasn't just a debate, it was a collision that exposed something deeper about justice in America. It revealed the tension between a culture increasingly addicted to grandstanding and an institution built to uphold principles that do not bend to applause. The stakes stretched far beyond the marble chamber. What America chose to celebrate in this moment would echo through its politics, its courts, and its communities. And so the silence grew heavier. The gavel rested, waiting to fall again. The audience, both in the chamber and across the country, braced themselves. For if the opening exchange had sparked tension, what was about to unfold would test not just the endurance of Roberts and Jackson, but the patience of an entire nation. Because when dignity is tested by arrogance, The question is never whether sparks will fly. The real question is who will emerge unshaken when the fire burns brightest. To understand why the moment in that chamber carried such weight, one must first understand Jasmine Crockett. Hers is not a story of quiet ascension or cautious maneuvering. It is a story of fire, of a voice that refused to stay in the background, of a figure who rose to prominence not by blending into the machinery of Washington, but by standing out, sometimes defiantly, sometimes recklessly. Born with a sharp tongue and a relentless drive, Crockett first built her reputation in local politics and law. She was quick, incisive, and unafraid to challenge authority. In the halls of the Texas legislature, she became known for her cutting remarks, her willingness to spar, and her refusal to temper her words, even when decorum demanded it. For many, this was her strength. A fearless defender, a voice unwilling to be silenced in the face of power. For others, it was a liability, constant edge that too often cut deeper than it should. When she arrived on the national stage, Crockett leaned into the very traits that made her polarizing. In a political environment obsessed with sound bites and virality, her confrontations became instant clips, shared across social media with equal parts applause and outrage. She was the kind of lawmaker who could turn a committee hearing into a battleground, who could transform a dry procedural debate into a moment that felt like prime-time television. Her followers cheered her bluntness. Her critics shook their heads at what they called recklessness. Either way, people were watching, and that was exactly what Crockett wanted. She thrived on attention, feeding off the spectacle. In a Congress where many voices blurred into monotony, hers pierced through like a siren. She would call out colleagues, mock opponents, and deliver her lines with the precision of someone who knew exactly which clip would trend online. Each clash, each viral moment became part of her brand. Jasmine Crockett, the fighter, the disruptor, the unapologetic voice of defiance. But beneath that defiance was something else, a hunger for the spotlight. Where others sought compromise, she sought confrontation. Where others valued the long game of legislation, she favored the immediate payoff of headlines. She was bold, yes, but boldness without restraint often tipped into recklessness. Her profile grew, so too did the stakes of her confrontations. The problem was that the very qualities that made her a star in the House were also the ones that clashed most violently with the solemnity of the Supreme Court. The court is not designed for theatrics. It is not a stage where volume outweighs substance, or where a well-delivered jab can replace a coherent argument. Its power comes not from showmanship, but from authority, tradition, and a gravity that has outlasted generations of political spectacle. And yet, Crockett brought her same style into that chamber. She carried with her the energy of viral committee clips, the bravado of cable news soundbites, and the swagger of someone who believed that volume could bend even marble walls. But here in this arena, the rules were different. Here, history did not bow to theatrics. Here, arrogance met an authority far older and deeper than any viral moment could match. Her allies may have cheered her firebrand approach, but those who watched closely could see the cracks forming. The smirk she carried was more performance than conviction. The sharpness of her words often masking the fragility of arguments that lacked the weight to withstand scrutiny. The court, unlike Congress, would not be rattled by theatrics. Robert's calm could not be drowned out. Jackson's quiet power could not be mocked away. Crockett had built her career on the gamble that boldness always wins, that the loudest voice commands the room. To her credit, in many rooms it had. But what she didn't realize was that this time, her usual tactics were about to collapse under the weight of history. The very fire that made her a rising star was about to be doused by the cold, immovable dignity of an institution that had faced down louder, fiercer storms and endured. And as the cameras rolled, as millions tuned in, Crockett stepped into an arena that demanded more than spectacle. She had prepared for a fight of personalities. What she walked into was a fight for values, respect against arrogance, truth against grandstanding.